Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. It is amazing to be back in a solo episode with you all. We have been sharing some amazing conversations and interviews that I have had recently with such incredible teachers and facilitators and leaders in the world. And it's always so helpful for all of you to hear not just my perspective and not just my teachings and my offerings. Oh, by the way, I dislocated my elbow and I am in this brace. Basically, a very deep wake-up call to slow right down, which of course I'm going to dive into probably a little bit later. But it's always really helpful to hear from other teachers and other leaders. And it's always really helpful for me, and I'm sure it is for all of you, to just constantly be reminded right now that there are so many of us trying to make change in this world and committed to offering a better world, and committed to offering whatever we can to participate and contribute to the shift that is taking place in humanity right now. And it is always such a relief for me when I sit with other teachers and other leaders to not only be reminded that we're not doing this alone, like there's points of light from all over the planet right now that are starting to intricately connect into a spider web of network, of committed visionary change. And of course, that is what is needed in order to be able to impact at a collective level, on a collective level. One person ain't going to do it. We're going to need to come at this from every possible angle to reach the potential that we have right now. And the potential is high. As completely batshit crazy as the world is right now, in equal measure, the potential for the maturation of the human species is so high. It's higher than ever. In fact, I've heard from many, many different places that 2026 is meant to be the year that this whole world changes, completely changes. And wisdom seekers and spiritual teachers and astrologers have all been predicting it. And I don't know about you, but I can feel it. And before any point of a huge breakthrough, a huge point of transformation, there has to be a stage of destruction. It's just part of the transformational process. Something has to break down that once appeared as fixed and normal and just the way it is. Something has to break down and destabilize in order for a new possibility of a new way of being and a new normal to even emerge. It cannot emerge within the same resonating frequency and structure as the old reality. So when you look at the world today, you just have to spend 10 minutes on social media today to be inundated by heaviness and darkness and challenge and pain. People are dying all over the world. Horrific things are taking place. Wars are happening everywhere. It's almost like it is like seeing the absolute worst aspects of humanity, but being streamed into our bedrooms and our living rooms and our personal lives on a daily basis, on a minute-by-minute basis. Now, of course, that's not the whole picture, but that is what we have access to and we get exposed to because of the nature of the internet and social media. And well, what I want to dive into in this episode is I want to dive into what that is doing to human beings and the human survival mechanism. It's inevitable. We actually cannot avoid it. To be exposed to that kind of charge and horrific circumstances of human life and human behavior and human way of being, it is inevitable that our mind, our brain mind, and our survival mechanisms and our stories are going to be reactivated and reactivated and reactivated over and over and over again. We are literally being re-traumatized on a daily basis. And we can't avoid it unless you want to go and live in a box and just live in the forest and turn everything off. Now, that is a very understandable lifestyle choice. I know people who actually live that way. And now I understand why. But for many people, that option isn't an option. And for many, that's also not what we want. So being exposed to this amount of charge and trauma and being re-traumatized over and over again on a daily basis is just a fact of what is taking place on the planet today. And if you are human, this relates to you. Why? Remember that this podcast and this YouTube channel is dedicated to looking at what is taking place in our everyday lives and what is taking place on the planet from an ontological context, from the context of what is running us as human beings, as a species, from the context of the human condition. And if you have a mind, if you have a brain, you cannot escape this. If you have a nervous system and a brain, you cannot escape this. So it's not just if this is going to happen, it is happening, and it's getting more and more intense. So this episode is looking at what is taking place that is not only keeping but accelerating the level of activation and survival and re-traumatizing that is taking place on a daily basis. How you can recognize that is happening for you. And then the whole point of this episode, where I want to kind of direct everything to, is to walk you through a 5-step inquiry process that every single one of you, including myself, can use to navigate ourselves into becoming conscious of what has been activated, and then how to be able to have some power over it so that we don't just mechanically and reactively behave and act from our survival. Because survival just generates more survival. So if we're watching all the activation and all the trauma that's taking place in the world, which is generated by survival, and then that is triggering our own survival, and then we are unaware that we're in our survival, and then we take actions and reactions based on that, led by that survival, we're feeding more survival into the system, and then that generates more survival. And then can you see, it's like what is happening to us on an individual level? We're being pulled continuously into the vicious circle of the human condition. And then that's driving our behavior, which is then driving our 3D reality, which is led by survival. But that's also happening on a collective level. That's also happening on a species level. So it's like what's happening individually is happening collectively. And we're just looping and looping and looping in a survival way of being. And most of the time we don't even know we don't even know we're in it. And we're wondering, why why does everything just feel so intense and insane and unmanageable? So I want to give you something in this episode that you can use in your life on a daily basis to bring consciousness to your own state, and then be able to use that consciousness to break you out of it, or at least have some power over it, that you get to choose a new way to be rather than reactive, which then shifts the frequency from survival to possibility. So let me just kind of break it down on how and why it's inevitable that you're going to be activated and triggered and in your survival more and more intensely at the moment. The human mind is designed only for our survival. And when I say our, I mean the human species. We have the same mind that hasn't really evolved much since the caveman days. In the caveman days, this human mind was extremely effective, meaning if we were out hunting and we heard a rustling in the bushes, immediately the human mind would recognize that rustling as a potential danger, meaning, oh, it could be a saber-toothed tiger. And then that will communicate through your whole system that there is a potential danger ahead. And then that communicates to your whole system, the fight or flight state, run, so that you can live, so that you don't die. And then you run, which leads to behavior. Now, that same mind hasn't evolved all that much since then. We're still with the same human mind that is designed for survival. Now, the problem is that the rustling in the bushes is constantly activating within our system by the mind that danger is ahead. And then we are responding as if danger is ahead. And then we are behaving as if there's a saber-toothed tiger around every corner. And then our behavior creates the 3D reality of the world that we have. And the consequences are devastating. Because that survival way of being is the survival way of being of leaders of our planet that have huge destructive toys that the mind activates mechanically, that there is danger ahead. The system is flooded with survival, fight or flight, which then leads to behavior. And what are the actions that are being taken? War, bombing, violence, aggression. I just could, it's endless, the devastating consequences that come from this way of being. Now, it's not just the leaders of our planet. This also happens in your everyday life. Your mind sees anything on the internet that seems like a threat. And it really could be anything. I mean, the fact that we are seeing wars and children being starved and killed, the fact that we are seeing people being murdered and shot, the fact that we are seeing these things on a daily basis, just as we're doing our washing up, that alone is already just an overload to a mind that is designed purely for you to survive. And so your system is going to be constantly being communicated. Run, 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 protect, run, protect, run. You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die. Now, that's just by seeing the tragedies that are taking place in the world. But that also happens on a micro level. You see a number in the bank account of your bank account that activates the scarcity that your parents suffered from. I don't know, let's use an example. Your father lost all his money when you were a child, and there was a lot of fear and scarcity in the household. You didn't realize it because it was just normal for you, but you were absorbing all that experiential field and watching them in scarcity and hearing them in panic and scarcity. And so that is the context from where you're looking, and your mind is wired in the neural pathways that is just your representation of normal. And then you see a number in the bank account, or I don't know, a big bill comes and you didn't expect it, and then boom, you're going to lose everything. You're not going to make it. You're going to starve. And the survival fight or flight kicks off. And then, of course, it feels so real. You don't even realize that you're being run by this survival mechanism. It just feels real. And then, of course, what feels real then determines how you behave. Maybe you're going to withdraw. Maybe your whole body will go tight and gripping and tense. Maybe you'll end up shouting at your children. Maybe you'll end up shouting at your partner. Maybe you'll end up completely abandoning your health and well-being. You can't get out of bed. You can't say anything. You cancel a job that you wanted to do, or you cancel a program you were going to do. It's all just too frightening, and it feels real. And then, of course, your behavior is driven by this fight or flight survival, and then generates more of the same survival. And we just keep looping and looping and looping. And it is an endless, suffocating loop where aliveness and possibility just isn't available. So, if you find yourself right now wanting so much to have your heart open, but you can't because you are just armored up and protecting yourself. If you find yourself gripping onto control more than ever, if you find yourself feeling more unsafe than ever, if you find yourself experiencing more anxiety than ever, if you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night spiraling with panic and fear and overwhelm, if you find yourself going back to old patterns of overeating or controlling your food or over-exercising or over-pushing or overworking, or if you find yourself wanting to hide or wanting to constantly overwork, if you find yourself in these kind of looping patterns that you know do not feel good, that is a sure sign that you are in survival. And it isn't because you're doing anything wrong. It's because you are a human being and you are run by a mechanical survival mechanism that doesn't appear like it's a survival mechanism. It appears like it is you and who you are, and that it's real, and what you're experiencing and what you're seeing is real, and it isn't filtered 100% by your past. It's like this feeling like you're in something but you can't get out, and you don't even know what it is. Like you're stuck in a paradox, but the more you try to get out of the paradox, the more in it you get, and you just don't know how to get out. You're trapped in something that is limiting you, that is gripping you, that has you, and you want so much to get out, but you don't know how. That is a sign that you are in the vicious circle of the human survival mechanism. And this is not a you problem. This is a human problem. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this episode today is because it's getting worse because of how much your mind is being exposed to, because there is tragedy and trauma constantly being exposed to you on a daily basis, and your mind will be just short-circuiting and short-circuiting and short-circuiting and short-circuiting. And then you'll probably find yourself in a constant state of trying to regulate yourself, which is totally understandable. But of course, when you're constantly trying to regulate yourself, you're just trying to get yourself back to a basic state of okayness to then just get re-triggered again, and then a basic state of okayness to then just get re-triggered again. And that also is survival, meaning it's helping you, but you're not free. You're still being run by the same vicious circle. So, I want to take you through this 5 inquiry process, meaning there are 5 inquiry questions that if you ask them deep enough, when you're in it, and you look deep enough, it has the power and the potential and the possibility to, at the very least, shift your relationship to the gripping of survival that you're in, which then gives you choice. And choice is power. When we're being run by something and we don't even know we're being run by something, there is no choice. And therefore, you have no power. Control and force and pushing and reacting is not power. That is fear. Withdrawing, withholding, hiding, pretending, proving, that's not power. That's fear. Power is when we can see very, very clearly what is running us, where it's coming from, that it is mechanical, meaning it seems to be contaminating how I'm seeing my life right now and how I'm seeing myself right now. And I can see all of this, and therefore this awareness and consciousness allows me to have a choice. And that choice is everything. That choice is the difference between having power and being a victim. Being run by something and being the driver or the co-driver. I say co-driver because we're always co-working with life itself, or higher intelligence, or a greater force beyond you. But that distinction between having choice and being a victim is so huge on the impact that has on our life. It's massive. It changes everything. And first off, it changes the relationship you have with yourself, your ability to feel like you have some power over who you're being and how your reality is appearing for you and how you're dealing with it. I mean, to me, that is a pretty huge, significant shift. So let's begin. There are 2 agreements that have to be made for these 5 inquiry steps to work. And these agreements have to be made with yourself. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I really, really mean that. You have to be willing and ready to make this agreement with yourself, and then you have to stick to it. Otherwise, the 5 questions don't work. So, and it's the agreements are between you and you, because you have all the power. So the first agreement is, I am now ready to be 100% responsible for how I am experiencing and generating my world and reality right now. I'm going to say it again. I am willing to be 100% responsible, not 99, not 99.9, 100% responsible for how I am experiencing and generating my reality and world right now. Now, that commitment alone is probably going to be doing all sorts of backflips to your mind right now, because the mind, led by survival, doesn't like that kind of commitment. The mind is addicted to blame, to trying to solve problems, to trying to control and grip and grasp and push and force and dominate and manipulate. The mind, so you're probably going to have this experience that's happening inside, like this constant negotiating process. Yeah, but what about this? And what about this? And he did do this, and that is happening, and it is not my fault. Right. All of that is going to be kicking off. And in fact, if that is happening, that's a sign of how powerful this commitment is. And in order to make this commitment, let me make something very, very clear. Being 100% responsible does not mean it is all your fault. It also doesn't mean that other people can do whatever the hell they want. None of that means any of this. 100% responsibility means taking 100% ownership. Meaning, no one outside of me or nothing that is outside of me can put this experience that I'm having inside of me. That is fact. There is nothing outside of you, even the tragedies that you're seeing on Instagram or social media or whatever, or the news. There is nothing outside of you that can put an experience inside of you. External factors can only activate what is already there. And then you experience what is already there as if it is because of what is happening outside of you. Meaning, my ex-husband rolls his eyes when we're in a conversation, and I immediately feel dismissed, unwanted, unloved, and not important. And then I feel rage. All he did was roll his eyes. The rest of everything that I'm experiencing and I'm seeing and I'm making his eye rolling mean, and the story that I make about his eye rolling is all generated by me, my mind and nervous system. Because that is what is already in the memory bank. My mother used to dismiss me and shut me off and roll her eyes. So nothing outside of us can ever put an experience or a mental process inside of us. Nothing. Which means that whatever we are experiencing, whatever we are experiencing and how the world and our reality is appearing to us is 100% created by our mind, our body mind and nervous system, by the story that our body mind is identified with. So when we realize that, we can take 100% responsibility, which means ownership, that what I am experiencing and what I am seeing and how I see it and how I perceive it and how it is appearing to me, and it feels so damn real, is 100% experienced and generated by me. So that's the first commitment. That alone is probably one of the most powerful steps we can take. That changes everything. That changes from us standing in the paradigm of being a victim to being powerful. So that's step number one. That's commitment number one. The other commitment, which is also a big one, I am willing to be 100% radically honest with myself about what is. When I ask these inquiry questions, I am willing to be 100% radically honest with myself to what is. Because wow, what I see over and over and over again when I facilitate people in retreats, in programs, in processes, mentoring people, coaching people, is how much the mind negotiates and adds meaning and story on top of what actually just is. If there is an experience of panic and overwhelm, unsafety, the story that is looping, that always loops every time you look at money, that then the mind will negotiate. Oh yeah, but that's because this is happening. Or oh yeah, that's because they do this. Or oh, that is because the Uranus is in the Aquarius star. Whatever. The mind will make meaning out of everything in order to try to negotiate with what actually just is. And can anything that is ever be not what it is? That's a big question. So in order for these 5 questions to work, inquiries to work deeply, we have to be willing to make those 2 commitments. And making those two commitments alone completely shift the paradigm from which we are now in relationship with ourselves and seeing our reality. From victimhood to power. And power is having the ability to create real change in our own world. That's power. So those are the 2 commitments. And you have to ask yourself if you are ready to make these 2 commitments. And when you are, these 5 questions will be life-changing. I am ready to be 100% responsible for being the source of my experience and creation of reality and the world and the way that I am seeing and experiencing the world right now. Commitment number 1. Commitment number 2, I am willing to be 100% radically honest with myself about what is. Okay, those are the 2 commitments. When you have made those, we're now going into the first inquiry question. And you may need to write down the answers to this. And it may be that it may take you 24 hours or a day or sitting with the question to really see what the answer is, because you may be so used to surviving and normalized in that state that it may take you a little bit of real looking and deep diving within yourself to really see the answer. Question number 1. What exactly am I experiencing right now in my body? Close your eyes and look. What is the textural sensory experience that I am experiencing right now in my body? Gripping of my stomach, pressure and heaviness of my chest, a contraction in my throat. My arms feel tingly and it's hot. What are the emotions? Now, these are very, very particular aspects of what makes up the human survival mechanism. So it's textural experience, emotional experience. What are the emotions that are present right now? Panic, overwhelm, terror, heartbreak, hopelessness, rage. What are the mental thoughts that are crossing my mind? And I want you to literally split it up so that you are seeing these as separate aspects of what makes up this whole experience that you're having. What are the mental thoughts? I'm never going to make it. Nobody chooses me. I'm so worthless. Write it down so that you can see it outside of yourself. So that's the first inquiry. And then you start to see what is making up your experience of reality and your world and yourself is made up of textural, physical sensations, emotional impulses, and mental thoughts. That is what makes up the survival mechanism. And it is the filter from which your reality is appearing. Now, when you look at all of that on paper, the next question is, how young am I in this right now? First thing that comes to mind. This gripping of my body, this emotional flooding, this mental noise. How young am I in this right now, and how familiar is it? Kind of still one question. Question number 2. I'll give you an example. I was totally overwhelmed by just so much overgiving, running my company and training. I was in the middle of training my coaches and some graduates from my Alchemy of Being training. I was in the middle of training them in advanced leadership training, whilst also being here in New Zealand as a single mother, and my kids are on summer holidays, and so they're home full time. And I was just totally overwhelmed. And I was in the mall with my kids, taking them to the movies, and I hadn't stopped. And I was in that mall and I just felt like collapsing. And luckily I took them to the movies. So as we sat down in the cinema and the movie came on, I had 2 hours to just sit there and walk through myself through this 5-step inquiry process. And I closed my eyes and I became really present to the textural, sensory, physical experience that was happening. And it was so eye-opening. Wow. My stomach was gripping like it was in knots. I could barely breathe. It was almost like I was hyperventilating. Everything was tight and in a state of freeze. The emotions, I'm not going to make it. I'm totally alone. Well, they're not emotions. The emotions were panic, fear, overwhelm, helplessness, hopelessness, and a lot of terror and shame. Then the mental thoughts, I'm not going to make it. I'm completely alone. That was first question 1. And then as I sat there and I asked the second question, wow, how old am I right now? And immediately I was really, really young, like baby. Now, I've done this work for a long time, so I know I have a lot of awareness of what's running me and what runs human systems. So immediately I was able to see that the past was here right now. Now, until I sat down and did this inquiry process, when I was just walking through the mall with my kids, that was not obvious. It really did seem like I'm completely going to fall apart. I am so alone. I'm completely overwhelmed, and nobody's here for me, which is a very, very familiar story. So when I started this inquiry process, it immediately in the first 2 questions pierced the illusion that this has anything to do with my reality, my present reality, My past was flooding and filtering and running me in that moment. And then question 3. Am I ready to stop resisting and to be with this past right here in the present? Now, this is a tough one because most of you will be so normalized to resisting. Well, firstly, you may not even realize that the past has been running you because it may just feel so normalized and normal to you. So when you get through question 1 and question 2, it will already feel like a huge pop in your consciousness. Then you get to question 3, am I ready to stop resisting and be present with the past right now? Remember the 2 commitments you made. I am 100% responsible for being the source of my experience of reality, and I'm willing to be radically honest with myself about what is. So am I now ready to stop resisting what is, which is the panic and the overwhelm and the gripping, well, this was my experience, or whatever is there, and stop resisting it? So that's what I did in the movies. I sat there and I realized that this gripping and panic has been there since I was a little girl. In fact, it's probably one of the biggest stories that I have been outgrowing in my whole life. My mother suffered from a really, really difficult time when I was born. My father had just left her. She was suffering from depression and being alone with 3 children as a single mother. And she had a lot of fear and panic and was really struggling to cope with herself, let alone me as a newborn. So my experience was that I was completely alone and I wasn't going to make it and no one was there for me. And what that happens is to the physical body and the nervous system, the solar plexus and the stomach grips, and the body goes into a gripping and the breath goes into a gripping. And of course, the mental radio that starts playing, well, it starts setting at that age and then it starts playing on loop your whole life. I'm not going to make it. I'm all alone. And then all the emotions. So for question number 3, I was able to sit in the movies and just stop. I saw that the past was right here, right now. And it was really trying to pull my whole reality into that filter. And when I hit question 3, am I ready to stop resisting this? I just surrendered. I didn't collapse into the child. I surrendered into what is. And as my children watched the movie, I sat there and I felt the panic. And I felt the loneliness. And I didn't even resist the gripping of my stomach and my solar plexus. I didn't try to change it. I didn't try to alchemize it. I didn't try to regulate it. I just was with it. I was experiencing it. And you can't conceptualize it. Understanding this is not enough. Step 3 is dropping into the experience. Being with is experiencing what the experience is whilst also seeing consciously what it is, the past. That's what being with is. So I just spent an hour just not resisting the tension and the resistance at the contraction and the tightness and just, it was so painful. And then I realized how many times I've overworked on top of that tightness and how many times I pushed and forced and dominated just to try and bury that tightness. No, I just was being with it. And all the emotions and all the fear and all the mental noise. And then you get to step 4, which may take a while because only once you're able to really be with it, and it may take days, you may have to be with it for days and days and days, and it's not on your time frame. Whatever you can be with will let you be. So you have to just be with it until it's no longer present. What's happening in step 3 is when you stop resisting the frozen moments of time in your nervous system, they release. that energy, that tension, that buried emotion, that buried memory starts to release and move, and moving life becomes flow. When you're ready to move into question 4, the question is, how do I need to be now? Or who do I need to be now? Meaning we're now moving into some form of action or behavior. When I came out of that and I moved into step 4, I realized that I'm so attached to this story and this way of being that my behavior had just kept driving me back into it. And I wanted to change. I wanted to behave differently. So I came home and I made some space in my diary. And I had to have a conversation with a few people to create cleaner boundaries. I had to start taking actions from a new place, which gives us different results. And that may take a while. And you may have to write all those down. And then you get to inquiry question 5. Who am I? And what is possible for my life beyond this story? And that one you can be with for as long as you want. You can write all the things down, you can dream it up. But that becomes possible because you've gone through the 5 steps of inquiry, which are not just questions that you want to understand awareness-wise and conceptually. They literally shift your consciousness and who you're being. And that's what gives you the possibility of shifting your world. Then it moves into behavior, then it moves into different results. So I hope that you have found this helpful. If you want, which will be really, really helpful for you, go back and listen. I think it's episode 3 or 4, The Vicious Circle of the Human Condition. And you can hear me teaching the entire foundations of what that is and how that's run. And that'll really feed and nourish and just exaggerate the depth and the power of this episode for you. If you want to continue this work and just be around this work and be around this kind of inquiry process, you can join our mailing list. You can hit the link below and join our mailing list, where I will regularly be sending out teachings and content that will serve you in your maturation. And also keep an eye out, because we are opening a free community called the House of Maturation. So you will be able to be in amongst an entire community that is fully committed to living from the context of maturation, and that we are all amongst it together. So join our mailing list and hit the link below so that you are the first people that get the invitation into that free community. That's it for now. If you have loved this episode, please share it with as many people as you can. If you're human, this relates to you. If you love this podcast and it serves you, please write us a 5-star review and give us a written review on Apple. And just share the podcast far and wide, so Apple and Spotify support us in reaching as many people as possible. If you are watching this on YouTube, do click the button below and head to the next episode, where I'm going to start teaching about motherhood and parenting from an ontological context. This will serve you if you are a partner to a woman that's going to be a mother, or if you are a parent, whether you're father or mother, or you want to learn more about your own mother, or you want to shift the context from who you're being in your relationship with your own children. So please hit the button below and head over to that next episode, which is coming soon. And subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you are the first to get all the new episodes coming. For now, thank you so much for listening. It is such an honor always to be here with you. This is the infinite potential of being human, and I'm Nicky Clinch.